Did you know that the Ashby to Derby railway line, which ran to the west of Newbold, was used by the British Army and Allied engineers during the Second World War to prepare them for the invasion of mainland Europe? Army engineers practiced demolishing and rebuilding railways. They were trained in railway and rolling stock maintenance. There was also a bridge building school at Kings Newton, not far from Melbourne. Before we look at what happened to the Ashby to Derby line, also known as the Melbourne line, during World War II, let's have a look at a brief history of this railway and its importance to Newbold and to Worthington. As mines and other industries opened and expanded around Newbold, tramways and railways were built to transport coal, clay and bricks. The tramways and railways are shown as yellow lines on this map and ran past and through Newbold. The first tramway built close to Newbold was opened in 1802 and carried limestone from Cloud Hill Quarry in Worthington to the Ashby Canal at Willersley. This picture shows the route of the tramway, shown in yellow, running to the west of the village. We've marked the road names on the map so that you can see how close the tramway ran to Newbold. This tramway was a horse-drawn tramway, with a team of horses pulling wagons along a single railway line. In 1873, now under the ownership of the Midland Railway Company, the tramway was replaced by a single-track, standard gauge railway, which allowed steam trains to run between Ashby and Derby. And this was known as the Melbourne Line. Freight such as coal, clay, bricks and pipes could now be picked up from Newbold's collieries, pipeworks and brickworks and transported to Ashby and to Derby. The Melbourne Line also carried passengers, and there were stations at villages including Worthington, Breedon and Tong and Melbourne. Residents in Newbold would have to walk to Worthington to catch the train. This picture shows a steam train on the Melbourne Line running past Newbold. In the background, you can see the kilns at Newbold's pipeworks. The Melbourne Line had a number of sidings along its route, and this picture shows the line running to the right of the sidings at Staunton Colliery, or Worthington Colliery as it was also known. The sidings are highlighted in yellow. Staunton Colliery, which operated between 1885 and around 1910, was located close to the end of Pipeyard Lane and next to the pipeworks. In this picture, the line is heading towards Worthington, and you can see pipes waiting to be picked up from the yard. This is an aerial photograph of Newbold pipeworks, and you can see some wagons on the sidings, as shown by the arrow. In 1923, following an Act of Parliament several years before, the Midland Railway was merged with many other railway companies to form the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. The London, Midland and Scottish Railway continued to run the Melbourne Line, but withdrew passenger services in 1930. When Newlount Colliery was opened to the south of Newbold in 1924, provision was made to link the colliery to the Melbourne Line. The line from the colliery to the Melbourne Line followed the disused Culloden Railway. New sidings were constructed in 1928 next to the Melbourne Line. This diagram shows how the Newlount Railway Line, highlighted in yellow, was constructed alongside the Melbourne Line. For reference, you can also see the pipeworks marked on the diagram, and this is highlighted in green. The fine dotted line marked in blue shows the route of the original horse-drawn tramway. Out of interest, there was also a branch line which connected Newlount's coal distillation plant to the mine. And you can read about the coal distillation site elsewhere on our website and how a disused container at the plant eventually became Newbold's own swimming pool. So now let's have a look at what happened to the Melbourne Line during World War II and how this railway, which was very important to our village industries, became important to the British and Allied war effort. In wartime, railways are strategically important. From a military point of view, railways were something to attack and something to defend. The British Army had a military railway at Longmoor in Hampshire, and this railway was built by the Royal Engineers to train soldiers on railway construction and operations. Army engineers would practice demolishing and rebuilding railways and railway bridges. And military personnel were also trained to operate and maintain a railway line and its rolling stock. When war broke out in 1939, the Army realised that it needed to increase its capacity to train Army engineers. So it set about looking for another railway line. In their search for a second railway, the War Department was looking for not only a railway line, but a training centre close by. And it just so happened that the London, Midland and Scottish Railway had a staff college in Derby with the Melbourne Line close by. So the Melbourne Line was chosen as the country's second military railway. And this picture shows the training centre in Derby. On the 19th of November 1939, a section of the Melbourne Line that ran from Smisby Road Railway Bridge in Ashby to East Chellaston Quarry near Derby was handed over to the War Department. And you can see it's marked on this diagram in yellow. This section of the railway line, which ran past Newbold, was named the Number 2 Railway Training Centre, Number 1 being at Longmoor in Hampshire. While being used for military purposes, coal and other materials continued to be transported along the Melbourne Line. Remember that coal was in great demand during World War II, and it was vital that coal from New Lount and bricks and pipes from our brickworks and pipeworks in Newbold could be transported further afield. Following the D-Day landings, the Germans retreated, and their priority was to destroy as many bridges and railway lines as possible in order to halt the Allies' advance into Europe. So you can see that it was important for the Allies to be able to restore the railway network as they advanced. New sidings were built at East Chellaston Quarry and next to the line at Kings Newton, near Melbourne. And it was here that Army engineers practiced building low-level bridges across the River Trent, as you can see in this picture. Engineers were also taught to lay railway tracks, important when you need to restore a railway network. When American troops arrived in 1942, they also used the Melbourne Line for training and building boxcars, a type of wagon that would be used on mainland Europe for transporting supplies. So do you know anyone who worked on the Melbourne Line during the Second World War? Were you a child in Newbold or Worthington who explored the railway line during World War II and saw the comings and goings of soldiers and railway workers? Or did you use the Newbold Tunnel as an air raid shelter? If you did, the Newbold Culloden Heritage Group would love to hear from you. Newbold played an important part in World War II, continuing to produce coal, bricks and pipes. And perhaps train drivers from New Lount Colliery were also involved in helping to train and prepare Army engineers who would go on to restore and operate the railways in Europe. Please let Newbold Culloden Heritage Group know if you have any further information on this topic. If you're interested in reading more about the Melbourne Military Railway, Mike Christensen has written these 2 books. They're packed with photographs and diagrams, and there is much more information about New Lount Colliery and the engines that transported coal from the mine to the Melbourne line.